Bad news. It seems as though our beleaguered president is sinking. A new Reuters Ipsos poll shows President Biden's approval rating has fallen to a crispy 36%. He is toast. Even among Democrats, his approval dropped 4% in 1 week. Not even a Supreme Court leaker can help you there, friend. And somehow we still have 2.5 years more of this great presidency. How bad can it get for Grandpa Joe? Well, let's get into it with tonight's party panel. Here they are. We've got attorney and Republican strategist Alexandra Wilkes. Yes. We've got Democrat pollster and co-host of The Five on the Fox News channel, Jessica Tarlov, Cleo's mom, and 2020 Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate. He is the puppet master of the Libertarian future. His name is Spike Cohen. There we are. I said it. So, Alexandra, this is really bad. If you are the Democrat establishment, the war in Ukraine, that hasn't worked. The abortion issue was supposed to galvanize the party and reignite Democrat passions. That has not necessarily worked. They've tried shamelessly to milk a horrific shooting for political gain. That isn't going to work. So what is the next play for Democrats?
I think we're going to start to see some of these, especially endangered House Democrats, start to abandon the president because there's just no other choice. When the spending and the inflation is up so significantly that people are having difficulty filling their gas tanks and buying food at the supermarket, they're going to want to place the blame on somebody, and that blame falls squarely at the president's feet. And so I think that you are going to see some of these endangered Democrats go after President Biden for some of the spending, and not just sort of in like the polite ways that we've seen, but really start to get aggressive. And honestly, they should. Their constituents are bringing to them real problems. These aren't, sort of like the noise that we've heard about a lot under, President Trump's administration, when every scandal seemed to be like the thing that was going to do them in. This was, these are constituents that can't find baby formula on the shelves.
I went to Target today, and the only formula was this like super high-end Neuro Pro formula, which, Jessica, you're a new mom. That has to be terrifying, politics aside. So I know they're ramping up the Defense Production Act to try and get more baby formula on the shelves. It should never get to that crisis level in this country. We should be able to open some avenues to feed babies in this country, but never assume the GOP is going to land a touchdown.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was going to say, so thanks for the help there. On the baby formula front, it's obviously been terrible. I'm super lucky that my mother-in-law lives in Central Jersey, and everything at the Targets there is like supersized, and so I have 3 cans of formula, and we'll hopefully make it to the point when they start ramping up production again and life resumes as normal. But I'm far luckier than so many of these mothers whose kids are especially on specialty formulas, which are not something that you can switch your kid just onto whatever you can get your hands on. And the amount of idiocy I've heard on television and in print about people's options when your child takes formula, like just whip out your boob and fix it. I just can't. So anyway, moving back to the politics of all of this, I do think that Alexandra's right to some degree about people running away from Biden. I don't think that people are going to start bashing Biden, but everyone's going to run their own House race and their own Senate race. And you've seen that already with people like John Fetterman, for instance, what Tim Ryan is doing in Ohio. People know how to read the room of their specific room. And they're going to have him there if it's something that's going to be useful, and they're not going to have him there if it isn't. I will say, to your initial point about this, about the Republican response, that this isn't about Democrats necessarily trying to weaponize or win an election off of this shooting. This is about the fact that if you listen to commentators right, left, and center, everyone is saying the same thing. What happened in that hour? How is it possible that the cops were standing outside wearing body armor? If this kid had a gun that scared police officers, we need to do something about the fact that this gun exists and can be legally gotten by someone who waited until their 18th birthday to get it. This guy actually followed the law. It has blown up every single GOP talking point. What we need is more good guys with guns. You had a ton of good guys with guns. Guess what? They did nothing.
No, we had a bunch of people that didn't want to engage with guns.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, you had. I'm sorry, but well, to Spike's point, yes, you had cowardice. So you had cowardice meeting evil. And that's pretty much the worst place you want to be in any situation. So
I would rather have an unarmed teacher than one of those cops any days. I mean, and when we think of the demonization of teachers that's gone on, where parents were saying, I don't want my teacher.
Please let me stop you so we're not conflating issues. This shooting has nothing to do with Randy Weingarten, and we're not going to talk about that. And unfortunately, the two brave teachers are dead.
Yeah. They are dead, and they're dead because of how passionately they felt about their kids. I'm not talking about Randy Weingarten. I'm talking about when we had these conversations about grooming kids and where people were saying, oh my God, these teachers are saying that they treat them as their own. Thank God they treat them as their own.
Not mutually exclusive. All right, these things can all be happening at once, but let's not take some of the issues in Virginia school board meetings and conflate it with a horrific shooting in Texas where an evil person killed 19 kids in cold-blooded murder. Spike, you have the last word.
Yeah, well, on this subject, we don't need to choose between the false binary of defenseless teachers and cops who refuse to protect them. We can choose to have the American people be able to defend themselves. It's not for nothing that mass shooters pick no-gun zones to do their shootings because they know they're the only people there that'll have weapons, and that very often the police won't do anything until it's far too late. Now, on this issue, when it comes to Joe Biden's approval rating, we're in a recession now. We have out-of-control inflation. We have food and formula shortages. We have labor shortages. We have shortages on all types of things. And the reality is it's not necessarily just Joe Biden's fault. Democrats and Republicans have been working on creating regulations and tariffs and restrictions and taxes and everything else that have led to these conditions. But Joe Biden's been one of the main architects of those for the past 40 years. So now it falls on him. And who better for it to fall on?
Yeah, he's also the president.
And he's the president.
Yes. And so whoever is leading the party in power, they're the one who gets the blame, and he doesn't have a lot of good answers for these things. You know, shifting the blame and mumbling, it turns out not a satisfying response for people who are really hurting, and they are. We just got new economic numbers, and so did the GDP. It dropped, revising numbers showing the U.S. economy is in contraction by 1.5% in the first quarter of 2022, putting us on the brink of recession. Are Americans feeling the squeeze here? There's a new survey, 56% of adults say they can't even afford to go on vacation this year. They're also planning to spend a lot less at restaurants, on entertainment, clothing, but won't that just tank the economy even faster? What are you cutting back on to pay for gas and groceries? Where have you seen belt tightening, Alexandra? And people you've talked to, how are they saving right now?
I mean, it's as simple as I'm not going to go somewhere because I can't afford the tank of gas that it's going to take to get me there. And I think that all of this, whether it's the GDP contraction or it's the worsening inflation that we're seeing out there, it goes back to something that Democrats really insisted on at the beginning of the pandemic, and something that they've long insisted on through social programs and other things, is that we're going to disincentivize work in this society. We're going to demean it. We're going to send out checks instead. We're going to basically have government take the place of you going out there and actually working. And we see how much that has actually hurt our economy, to take people out of their routine, of taking people out of the routine of going to work and sending out checks instead. This has created just such an enormous problem in this country that likely can't be reversed for many decades at this point. I think that we have done almost irreparable damage to the economy
well,
through
the Fed
these kind of
and
programs.
CBO have been completely off on their numbers and their projections. But, you know, Jessica, when consumer confidence goes, so goes the rest of the economy.
Right.
Whatever has been holding it up to this point, people are now seeing the numbers in the markets, even if they don't have a 401k. And, you know, they're spooked. They see interest rates going up, and we're seeing home sales go down. So this is what hastens bad economic news.
Absolutely. And the big shift is obviously what's gone on with the market. It was something that kind of buoyed the Trump administration as well, that everything just kept surging and people kept making money and was encouraging people to get involved in the market. And now, I mean, I know personally, I'm sure everyone on this panel has been checking their accounts on a daily basis to see just how much they have been losing. So it's incredibly scary. Consumer confidence is obviously a great predictor of how people are feeling about things, but they're saying it. I mean, what is it? It's at like 80% who think the country is on the wrong track.
Yeah.
I just want to respond to something quickly that Alexandra said about disincentivizing work. Democrats are actually the party that talks about paying people a fair wage, a living wage. I understand the effect that those checks had, but I fail to see how this is going to be the catalyst for a decades-long problem here, because people were getting relief during a global health pandemic when the world was shut down.
Yes, but the problem is that the relief came in the form of $200 billion to public schools at the behest of teachers' unions. 6% of that money has been spent. Last word, Spike.
The world was shut down by Republican and Democrat politicians working together. The economy is being destroyed by Republican and Democrat politicians spending trillions of dollars, having the Federal Reserve create 40% of all the money that's ever been created in the past 2 years, which is leading to the inflation that's just getting started and the recession that's also just getting started. Joe Biden's president. He shares just as much as the blame of as anyone else, and he's the one in charge. But the reality is this is not a Democrat versus Republican problem. This is people in power who are using their proximity to the money supply to screw over the rest of us in order to enrich the cronies that put them in office, and the rest of us are stuck holding the bag while they get bailed out. It's only going to get worse until we replace all of them.
All right, beautifully said, Spike.